Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz low woodwind player and composer right out of Brooklyn, New York, Brian Landrus. He has been dubbed the Low Woodwind Expert, and he has had a very interesting journey towards his latest, very delightful album called The Deep Below. When he was a kid growing up in Reno, Nevada, he wrote an essay that said that when he grew up, he wanted to move to New York and play with his heroes, and that's exactly what he's doing. He began playing music at the age of 12 and went professional at 16. He's toured the world with Esperanza Spalding and gigged with cats like Jerry Bergonzi. He's a new father digging the creative space that he's in now, and it's only going to get better from here. Dig this interview, my friends.
Hey, first of all, thank you for taking a little time to talk with me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for taking the interest to want to hear, so I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Let me go ahead and dive in here, and let me ask you, what has been going on lately?
It's been a crazy, it's been a crazy, I don't know, I was going to say a year, but looking back, a lot more than that. But this year alone has been amazing because I started my PhD at Rutgers in classical composition, and right before that, when I knew I got in and I was going to be working there and teaching there, that I knew that I wanted to record an album before I went in because I knew it'd get crazy. So I went in with my buddies and we recorded the trio album before school hit. And so went and did that, and then first semester of school I had a new baby, and just been playing a lot, doing a lot of recordings, and it's been super, super busy, thankfully.
Yeah, congratulations. That's great. That's
Thank
wonderful.
You.
So you grew up in Reno, Nevada. Give me a snapshot of what it was like to grow up there to foster a love of music, and more specifically jazz for you.
You know, the older I get, the luckier I realized I was, because when I started playing when I was 12, and I had some other loves in my life, but really when I started playing, and I fell in love with it deeply by the time I was 13, and my teacher was, he's still around, a great guy named, it's like Frank, and it's like Frank Perry. He showed me all these Stan Getz recordings, and he actually was on the road with Buddy Rich, and he was on this tour, and he decided that he had enough because it was so heavy with drugs, and I think he said he got off at a bus stop that happened to be at Reno, right outside of Reno, and he got off and quit the band. And so when I got him as a teacher, he just had this amazing passion for music, and jazz especially. And we started working on it really, really early. And the thing with him, first of all, was that he got me going with improvisation by the time I started, and he was showing me that this is what Charlie Parker did. And I remember the moment in the lesson with him when we were working on Out of the Omni book, which is all the transcribed solos from Charlie Parker, and that Aebersold did, actually, I think in the late 70s. And he was telling me, he was trying to explain to me the Bird was making everything up as he went. And I couldn't get the concept. I just kept asking him, what do you mean? What do you mean? And he said, no, he was making this up. Some guy wrote this afterwards, and Bird was improvising. And it all kind of clicked when I realized that that's what this music is about, and I got into it heavily. And the thing about it, where I feel so blessed, is that I caught Reno where it was a time when everything was kind of going away. I don't even want to say kind of. It was completely going away. At the peak, they had 10 big bands that played every night, and they had everyone from Sammy Davis to Frank. It was like everyone would come in and perform there. And so when I started playing, I got my first big gig when I was 16, and it was with the Coasters and the Drifters. And it was because one of my other teachers was sick, and he recommended me for the gig. And so I got in really young, and now it's like when I'm teaching kids, and to think that I was on a stage in front of 1,000 people when I was 16, it blows me away. But it was really because I had these people that were so generous, and they believed in me so much that they knew I wouldn't go out there and embarrass them. So, because really, you know, if someone's subbing for you, you can't get someone who's a hack. You know, I don't mean to be mean or anything, but it's true. It's like you got to have someone that can hang. So these guys believed in me, and I started playing professionally so young, and bought a bunch of instruments. And the other thing with Reno was that, you know, my teachers told me early on that saxophone is only the beginning. You really have to learn a lot of different instruments. You have to be incredibly proficient on clarinet and flute. And that's the beginning. You know, if you want to really work, then you're going to have to learn oboe and bassoon. And that's just kind of the way it is. And so I got heavily into the doubling when I was really young. So by the time I was, you know, 19, 20, I could play all those instruments proficiently. And I was working with a lot of pop artists because, and you know, I was known as the kid. And so it was a blessing that I was in a situation where people supported and guided me to learn what I learned, because it was a skill set that's unusual.
Well, and you're called the Low Woodwind Expert, and it seems like you took that advice pretty well. What do you think about that label that you've been given? How does that make you feel?
I mean, it's kind of funny to me because I've always thought of it as, I never feel like I was really good at anything. So to hear expert is kind of funny to me, you know. But also I know that I guess the reality is the thousands of hours that I've spent in a practice room. I guess that comes in, but you know, I mean, really, it was. I'm lucky because I fell in love with it, and I think I had the drive that the low woodwinds just felt right. And when I would play them, it just felt good, you know. And it's like on flute, for instance, you know, I had a bunch of gigs on flute since I was a kid, and I'm a really big guy, you know. I'm 6'7", and it's like my hands are huge, and flute always hurt my hands. And so I'm not even sure who said it or if anyone said, I can't remember, but I remember thinking, well, you know, the flute was like crippling me. It was hurting so bad. Even when I was getting my master's, I had some concerts, and I remember practicing so hard for this one flute part that I felt something kind of snap in my wrist, and I couldn't play for, I don't know, about, I think it was 6 months, because I got tendonitis so bad and carpal tunnel. It was just like I had this, you know, and it just kind of woke me up. And I thought, well, you know, I've worked so hard for this stuff, so let me see if there's something that won't hurt my hands that I can do. So I bought an alto flute, and that felt a lot better, and the sound just resonated with my heart. And then I ended up buying a bass flute later, and things just kind of went that direction. So I felt like I needed to obviously be able to keep playing, and with flute and piccolo and, you know, these instruments that I had spent so much time on, I still play them, but I wanted to be able to progress, and I got to a point where I felt like physically there were some problems, and I needed to seek out what other ways I could express myself on. And thank God I found these other instruments, and bass clarinet was one of these horns where I played it the first time and thought, this is just unbelievable. This is the universe right here. You can do anything on this instrument, and I have to learn how. So yeah. You know, and luckily that's where my heart is. So in New York, it's been amazing because everyone hires me to play those instruments, and I'm very, very grateful that that's worked out. And if they want to call me a low reed expert, then I'm honored by that term. It seems kind of silly to me because I know how many people there are that play so much better than I do, but if they want to say that, then thank you.
Yeah. So you started out playing music at 12. You're in front of a crowd professionally at 16. Would you say that it was kind of woven into the stars that you were going to get into music, or was there another dream that you had growing up?
I think it was. Yeah, I think it was woven in, but you know, it's one of those. The only other thing that I did that I was really good at was boxing and fighting, and it was my dad is an inch taller than me. He's huge, and I remember when I was a kid, he told me that I remember him pulling me aside, after one day I got my ass kicked. I think I was defending my sister, and she's 2 years older than me, and I would fight kids that were, her age, and I remember him telling me that, he's like, Brian, you're gonna be a really big guy, and it's your job, just like it was my job, to defend the people that can't defend themselves. And if you see something going wrong, then you need to help that situation, and you have the bravery to do that. And I remember him saying that, and I got in a lot of problems when I was a kid up through a lot of times in my life, but I'm proud to say I've never thrown the first punch, and I've never done anything. And I think that probably would have driven me into another facet, and maybe I don't know. I know I would have wanted to. I've always loved animals, so maybe a veterinarian. But I think, I don't know. I feel like I'm supposed to be a warrior, and I don't know how that correlates to music. But I've always been a warrior, and that's just kind of been. I just want to try to help the things that I see that are wrong in the world. But
yeah, I'm
trying to do that with music. It's like the bigger cause for what I'm doing now. It's like I play music, and it's kind of frivolous in a lot of ways. It's music, but I'm trying to take that to a higher level where I can have more of a voice. But I think certainly with being born in Reno, Nevada, when my dad's like kind of a cowboy, he's a jeweler, and I grew up with horses and the whole. Looking back now, it's just ridiculous. Right now I'm sitting on the Upper East Side looking out on these huge buildings, and it's so different than how I was raised. So something must have been in the stars. There has to be, without a doubt.
And that's a great lead into my next question. You go from some place like Reno to Brooklyn, which is such a massive transformation of culture and scenery and action and movement. What was that like when you first moved to Brooklyn and New York specifically and got involved with that scene?
My mom actually found a journal when I was in middle school that, the assignment was you're supposed to write where you're going to be when you're 30. And it was funny because she found it, and this was about 5 years ago, and she said, Brian, you got to read this when you come to town. And I came to town, and it was pretty crazy because it said, I wrote in there, when you're 30, where are you going to be? And it said, I'm going to be playing jazz in New York City, and I'm going to be playing with my heroes. And it's kind of crazy, but I really had that from a young age. So it's like when I went to NEC in Boston, I always looked at it as a stepping stone, and I was studying certainly with my heroes. And, I moved to New York 2 weeks after I graduated from school, and I always looked at Boston as it was a great city, and I'm very grateful to have been there, but I knew I wouldn't live there for long. I knew it would be just a short place. Well, you moved to New York, and you never. I think you just have to be aware that you're going to get spanked every day. And I don't think that ever ends. You go hear concerts and play concerts, and every time I play, I hear amazing musicians that I've never heard of, and I think I was used to that from a young age because all my best friends were always 20, 30, 40, 50 years older than me. So it's like, it's nothing new in a certain way because I would always, even though when I was 16 and I was playing pro with the Coasters who were 70 at the time, it's like those were my friends. So I was always looking at them as that's where I wanted to go. So New York was just kind of that on a higher level, it's I don't think that ever changes. As a matter of fact, last Saturday I played a gig with my buddy Igmar Thomas, the trumpet player, and we toured the world with Esperanza for like a year and a half, and he has this great big band. And Billy Hart called me that night when I was at sound check, and I was talking to Billy, and he said, "Who's playing tonight?" And I told him Justin Brown was playing on the drums, and Billy says, "Man, I'm going to come down." And I said, "Okay, great." I didn't think Billy actually would. So Billy shows up at the gig, and everyone was scared of him because he's such a legend. And I love Billy, and I've become so close with him. You forget sometimes how legendary some guys are when they're your good friends, you know. And I was hanging with Billy, and Billy said the same thing. He said, it's always funny to me because Igmar announced him as, we have a legend in the house. We have Billy Hart, everyone. You know, we have this living legend, and, you know, and the whole house applauded. And Billy said, it's always funny to me because I hear people like Justin Brown playing where they're just such incredible musicians. And he said, I don't know why people would clap for me when you got someone playing the drums that's like that. And it was amazing to me to hear that, because here's a guy that I really feel like is one of the best musicians ever live. You know, I don't think you get on any higher level than where Billy's at. Yeah. And to hear him understanding that this is a step in the process, and he's just one of many. It was an incredible thing to hear from a legend. And I think he's right. I think it's a place where you always want to strive for more, because when I hear myself, I never hear anything I try to hear positive, but to me it's just like, oh man, same thing. I got to go back and practice that same thing I've been doing wrong for the last 15 years. I got to just learn how to get to the next level.
Absolutely. Well, it's interesting, talking about the way Billy views himself. You've played around a lot of different luminaries since you've been to New York. You've been around Jerry Bergonzi, Gary Smulian. The list goes on and on. What is it like? What's it like to climb on stage with people like that? And is that kind of a general feeling you get from the more legendary folks? They just feel like they're musicians, they're regular people that are just, they got recognition, but they're just carrying on like regular people?
Yeah, I think they are. I think they're regular cats that have just, with Billy, when I was talking to him about this the other night, because he was saying, well, Brian, why do you think they're acting like that? And it was interesting to see in his eyes that he was actually, asking me a question in the sense of like, what do you think? And it was, and the only thing I could say to him was, Billy, you have persevered. I'm 36, and he's like, I don't know, 74 right now or 75. And I said, man, you pushed through. You have done this for your entire life. And you have played with everyone, and it's like, he's one of these guys where really he has played with her. And we talk, I've talked to him about James Brown and just like playing with everyone. Yeah. And I think with most of these guys, they have just, it's just a matter of they've dedicated themselves endlessly, and I think they can relate to the younger generation. They can see that and they recognize that. And I think at first you get awestruck when you start playing with a superstar. It's easy to be, I don't know, I guess just to be, to want to talk to people too much or something. I don't know. I guess I've just learned over the years that you just got to really play it cool and just know that you're there for a reason. It's not a mistake. And even if it was a mistake, don't let them know it's a mistake. and you just have to believe in what you're doing. And like Gary Smulian is one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. And I started studying with him when I was in Boston, and I came to New York to take a lesson with him. And he was so incredibly generous. He gave me all these albums that were out of print for me to copy, and he trusted me without knowing me at all. He didn't know me, and of course, I had no reputation. No one knew who I was. And Gary, for whatever reason, believed enough that he gave me all these rare out-of-print albums and music that was out of print, and let me take it back to Boston to copy it and then send it back to him. And that's something I've never forgotten. And he's just a really genuine person. And it's, I think I don't know, at least I feel like I just need to hang out with these people and try to connect with them as a human first. The music always comes, and it's just understanding that it's a pursuit that's lifelong. And it's like everything that Gary has achieved, everything that he's achieved, and everything he's doing currently, he's still working so hard, and I don't think that ever ends. I think that's just where it begins, and I'm lucky to get some recognition. And then I know, though, I would never get complacent with that. I would know that the kids behind me, that's who pushes you. And that's what Billy was saying. And he was so right. It's like, here's a kid, Justin, who's 30, and he's pushing Billy, and he's talking to, Justin came up to him and bowed to him after the gig and said, Billy, thank you for coming. I think that's where I want to be when I'm Billy's age, and still be that humble and understanding of where it's coming from. And music is a much larger force than any one person. And I think we just have to understand that.
That's right on. Yeah, that's well said. Very well said. And speaking of young luminaries that are out there, you got to travel with Esperanza Spalding on a tour for some time. What was that like? What was it like to be around her? And that must have been a pretty big deal to go that long on that length of a tour.
Yeah, I think it was an incredible experience. And the people I met, I love Espy, and she's a great person. And we became really good friends. And she deals with a lot, and seeing the pressures of what she deals with is pretty intense. And there's a lot of things that I didn't understand until I was on the road with her, seeing that kind of vibe where people are. We were in. It was in Switzerland. I can't remember what city it was, but some guy had snuck in backstage, and I just happened to walk by, and he was at her dressing room door, and he was saying, Esperanza, I know you're in there, and she's being quiet, and I knew that was the room she was in, but we're talking a tiny room, like 4 foot by 4 foot, and I knew Esperanza was in there, and and me, like I said, being a fighter, I just, I was very nice to the guy at first and said, sir, you need to leave. And he started swearing at me, and so I just grabbed him and, and ended up like throwing him outside and was like, get the hell out of here. And he ran away, and Esperanza was like, terrified. And so when I went back inside to see her, and she was like, Brian, did you throw him out? And I was like, yeah, I threw his ass outside. He's done. He's gone. And then the security had missed this son of a bitch. I don't even know how. And the oddest part, actually, looking back, it was a bomb shelter from World War II that had been turned into a venue. And because there were these huge iron or steel doors. They were enormous. So this was the layout of this place, and this guy got in somehow. And here he's knocking on the door saying, Esperanza, I need to talk to you. I love you, and we need to talk. And I didn't just let me talk to you for a minute. I saw that several times, and it's like you see that kind of intensity, and I could see why she kind of disguises herself when she goes out, and she deals with a lot. And that's a pop vibe, it's like you don't hear, like Billy, back to Billy. No one's doing that to Billy. So it's a different vibe. She's in a different circle, and I think she's, also dealt with a lot of people that have kind of supported her business without getting into too much detail. A lot of people have really helped her out, but also incredibly, they've really taken advantage. And it was hard to see that, because it's disheartening. You would think if anyone in the world who's really on top and is making a killing, if anyone is in the jazz world, it's Esperanza, and that really wasn't the case. And so, she was taking this, it was like a mini big band out on this international tour, and she really lost money doing that. But the whole reason she did that was because she believed in it so much, and she loved the music and wanted to carry on that tradition. And, the heartbreaking part is that now she's completely changed that, because I think, economically it's not really a feasible thing to do. So now she's doing more of a pop thing, because she got tired of that. It's like you can't pay bills off of accolades. So I think that she's I feel like in some ways she's a kid, and I don't know if maybe I shouldn't say that. I just think that I think when you blow up when you're that young, that's gotta be a trip. And I don't think she knew how to deal with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so many people, so many people would come up and, when they heard I got the gig, and can you tell Esperanza hello? I went to school with her, and let her know that I still play and I love to play. It's just that kind of bullshit. Man, that's really hard. That's tiring.
Yeah, well,
anyone.
Yeah, and we have a real weird obsession in this country with celebrities. So, just with that dude going to the door and just the way people interact with it, and I think that's the thing that you've touched on over and over about the jazz craft in particular. There's a level from Sonny Rollins all the way down that there's this genuine level of being humble and passing that jazz torch on, because a lot of these old cats are leaving. And I think, here in Kansas City, we have the Mutual Musicians Foundation, the oldest African-American union for jazz musicians in the world. And there's a genuine vibe that's like, let's keep this going. Jazz needs the stories, just what you just wove, the tales, the stories, the music, the lore. You got to keep that organism alive and going,
Yeah, absolutely.
And, but, and then you get someone young like Miss Spalding, and it just blows up. I mean, once she got that Grammy, I'm sure overnight the immediacy of her life instantly changed, because I remember that. She was just this young kid on stage. The entire world of music, from Bono to McCartney, is looking at her face. And she's like, wow, and there you go. All of a sudden, you're on the ground with binoculars, and then you're the star in the sky. That's a huge leap,
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
But anyways, let me come back down to a cellular level with you and ask you, was there a jazz album that really parted the curtains for you and you were like, wow, that's amazing?
Charlie Parker was Strings.
Yeah.
When I was 12, that was one of the albums that my teacher Frank Perry gave me. He gave me 3 albums. And they were all really influential. Well, looking back, he gave me Stan Getz, and it was it was the album. It was on a tape, and it was actually a compilation. It wasn't any album, but it was Stan, and he did all sorts of different tunes off of his catalog, and it was this mixtape of Stan. It was just ridiculous, and he knew Stan, and they had a bunch of mutual friends. It was that record. And then it was Charlie Parker with Strings, and then it was actually a Don Menza big band album that I've never even found what it was, and I'm sure if I saw it, I would know. But I even remember hanging with my friends playing on this tape, and my friends looking at me like I was an alien. I was saying, "Listen to that! Isn't that amazing?" They were looking at me like, "What the hell are you talking about? Can we go play some football outside?" I just remember them all looking at me like, "What is it? Are you okay? I don't hear it. I don't know why you like this." I think that it was those, and then I got into music so much that was listening has been a focal point of my life, and it's I worked at a Home. It wasn't a Home Depot, but it was called Supply One, but it was like a Home Depot. When I was, I think I got the gig when I was 15 or something, and I just would look at my hourly wage as in CDs. How many CDs can I buy after today? And I would just go out and invest in albums and just keep going. Dexter Gordon certainly had a huge influence. I was a tenor player first. I was playing tenor, like with all those Motown cats. I was playing tenor first. It was when I was, I think, 19 or 20 was when I got a baritone, and then I got into all the Barry guys. But really, at first, it was Sonny, it was Wayne. Really love Wayne, and I got into those guys the most initially.
Right on. So, oh no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, mentioning those names and what kind of got you into this. If you could go back in time, if you could get into a jazz DeLorean and have the good doc at the wheel, and you could punch the numbers, and you could go to any show, who would you see, and where would you go and see it?
I think as a baritonist, I would probably go see Mulligan. I would love to meet Mulligan, and it's one of the main reasons that I went to Boston was because Brookmeyer was there, and didn't he grow up in Kansas City? I think I'm not sure.
Yeah, he has a deep history here. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So Bob, he was when I started started studying with Bob, it's like he became such a dear friend of mine, and I miss him all the time. And really talking with him about Mulligan, as a baritone player, I would love to go talk with Jerry and see what he was thinking, and talk to him about the horn, and just talk to him about life, because to all accounts that I've heard, he was just an incredible guy, and of course, like most, a troubled spirit, but it comes with the territory.
Absolutely.
And I would love to talk to him. I mean, to be cliche, it would be I would love to hang with Bird. I mean, that guy, I'm sure he was a wild man. That must have been a hell of a hang if you're hanging with Bird. That must have been out.
Yeah.
So I would say him too. That would be incredible. I'd love to go hang with him, to be such a genius and die when he was 36 or 35.
Yeah.
And have this legacy behind you. That's just wow. It's hard to imagine how many people he's influenced.
I am always amazed at how many times I hear Bird is the inspiration to know that he's here. In fact, his gravesite's 10 minutes away from where I'm at. So,
wow.
I'll pop by and see it. It's wild because, there's always the misconception too. The movie says that he said he never ever wanted his body to come back to Kansas City, but many people, and there's historians, Chuck Haddock's a big historian here in town. He wrote a book and he said that's unequivocally 100% not true. He actually dug coming back to Kansas City. This was where his roots were, but I still am floored at how much he has influenced, and it makes me peer a little deeper with my ears into his music, because what he was doing, I've heard interviews with him, and he's just like, I'm wailing. That's just all he ever said. I'm just wailing. This is just what I'm doing. But I think there was a level of classical observance that he had. I mean, he was a real Stravinsky guy, and I think he was picking up some of those early preternatural tones of things that really shook his roots,
Absolutely.
So, he was an amazing cat for sure. And the fact that the coroner said that his body, when they did the autopsy, was like 30 years, more, that's even amazing how much living he put into that body,
Right.
So, but let me ask you this. You sound like a very journeyed, wise cat. You've had a lot of mileage, and you're embarking on a whole new journey as a parent. What is the greatest thing about waking up every day for you?
Wow, that's quite a question, man. I think I think knowing that I can improve every day, I think that kind of keeps me going, and I think that's improving as a human in general, and improving as a parent, improving as a musician. Just trying to follow the path and really grow. It's like I think that growing in our lives is everything, and that can never stop. And if it does, then we might as well die. And I think for me that's it. It's like I know where. It's different levels. It's like I know where I want to be musically, and I know I'll never probably reach that, but I know that's where I'm dreaming of, and where I want to be, and where I think I feel like I could get closer to where I want to go, but I'm not sure if I could ever reach it. But that's definitely inspiring to me, and I think every day when I play my instrument and I compose, and you feel it in your heart that something positive has happened, and that keeps pushing me.
Yeah. Of all the people that you played for throughout your life, everybody's going to have their idea of who you are. I mean, even the people that are close to you, friends, and everybody in your life has a perception of who you are. Tell me who you think you are.
I think I'm I think that I'm definitely a person that when you would see me visually, it's not what you would get spiritually, because I'm huge and I look like a fighter, and I've always I grew up having some crazy things happen when I was young, and just, I'm lucky to be alive, man. It's like I think that all that stuff kind of led me to just push hard and try to keep going with this no matter what. I'm not sure exactly what people see when they look at me, and I don't know. I know that I hope that they see my heart first, and I do feel like my love for all creatures in the world is the most important thing in my life. Period. Music is wonderful, but for my love for all animals and all life, that's the bigger draw to me, and that's the bigger picture that I want to have some influence in my life and do something positive for that purpose. It's not to be the best saxophonist alive. I mean, that would be a wonderful thing, but there's no such thing anyways. As Bergonzi said, and Garzone, and all my, it's like all those guys know, they're wise enough to know that it never happens because there's no such thing as the best. And I think just the pursuit in improving and I don't know. I guess I think a lot of my friends know me that I've been somewhat obsessed. I would say, I'm sure they would say that I don't let anything stop what's going on and what I think needs to be done to help a situation.
Yeah. Sometimes I have an extra question or two, but other times I feel like you just summed everything up, and I think you just did with that answer. So I think I'm gonna end it there.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in New York City, Kansas City, and spots all over America, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Brian for his compassion, dedication, and flat-out cool. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store, or you can always visit theneonjazz.blogspot.com for all things Neon Jazz. Until next time, enjoy the music, my friends.
Neon Jazz.